72 decibel. So it's about 3 dB difference just on steady cruise. It's obviously way more than that when you got your foot into the gas. I'm starting to call that switch the inner childhood switch, because boy, it turns on the kid inside of you, makes you do silly things, and definitely puts a smile on your face when you turn on the loud exhaust. Much preferred that way. And it is a nice feature that in 6th gear that the exhaust goes into quiet mode, because it would become a bit tedious flying down the highway listening to the exhaust note if you're going for hours at a time. So as you can see, a beautiful day. We're driving out towards the Rocky Mountains on our way to the coast if everything goes well, if the police let me cross all the borders and that. So hope you enjoy. I'll share more experiences. You can see the pavement's not exactly smooth here, and dead comfortable going down the road. I had a BMW 435 before this. I would say it rides darn close to as comfortable as that car was. A little harsher, obviously 30 series tires, and definitely a more sport orientated suspension in this, but very, very comfortable flying down the highway in this car. So we'll head out to the mountains, enjoy some twisty, turny mountain roads on our way to the coast, and hope you enjoy the videos. Here we are 12 hours later. Obviously not all drive time, some rest time, lunch time, and all those good things filling up. But people were wondering if I was going to drive this car. I guess I proved it today. There we are. You can see that I've got 1,150 kilometers on here. And it's probably about 700 miles. And it was a very, actually relaxed, enjoyable drive, very comfortable going down the highway. Vehicle does tram line when it gets in those deep ruts that are in the freeway where the big rigs have been rolling up and down. But other than that, when it's on regular, good, or decent, or even rough pavement, it just drives arrow straight. And you can't get away from tram lining when you got such big tires on a vehicle like this. So yeah, other than that, I checked the oil twice, so 700 miles. I haven't had to add any oil, and it's hard to even tell if it's moved on the dipstick. So, you know, there's lots of stuff on the internet about these engines using oil. I had a 5 liter before, and it was bulletproof, never used a drop of oil in its life. 5 liter Coyote, that is. So optimistic. Obviously early days with this car, but optimistic that I might have a good motor here in terms of oil consumption. Definitely it's nice and strong. I'm taking it easy on the car till I get that 1,000 miles or 1,600 kilometers in. Not driving her too hard. If I would have to say anything about the car, it really is a driver's car. It's super analog. Just, you know, the shifter now is really nice and smooth. It's heavy, but each gate is just beautifully spaced. The gear ratios are all great. The engine winds up like crazy. Car handles well, like it's amazing. Putting her into a tight corner, if you really have to, you can push it. I've been in a car, a GT350 on the racetrack, rode shotgun while my buddy was doing hot laps. And I know that these cars can handle pretty darn good. So when they're flat out. So really happy with the car. In terms of tires, you may have seen one of my other videos. I put some Michelin Pilot Sport 4S's on this car and took the Cup 2s off, and boy am I glad I did that. So drove through the Coquihalla. There's a TV show, I forget the name of it, about the highway. It's pretty notorious for the amount of snow that it gets in the winter. Well, it was raining cats and dogs up there today. It was only 6 degrees Celsius. I don't know, what's that, like 45 Fahrenheit, if I had to guess off the top of my head. And lots of water running across the roads. Even with these tires, I could feel them loading up with the amount of rain that was coming down. It felt like it was getting close to aquaplaning, but it wasn't. You know, I was doing 100 to 110 kilometers an hour, so 60 to 65 mile an hour in that range, and plowed right through it. So I wouldn't have had the same confidence if I were on the Cup 2s to drive through the weather like that. So really happy with the tires that I bought for this car. Yeah, it makes it a great driving car, because that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to drive and enjoy this car. Totally really impressed with what Ford's put together here for a product. I can tell you, if I were one of the engineers working on this car when it was being developed, I would have been really happy. Would have been a feather in the cap of an engineer's career to do a car like this. You can tell through and through it's been thought out. Everything's built around a driver's car. It's old school analog. The only concession is the power steering, electronic power steering in this, and I'd have to say it's probably the best feedback power steering system I've had. Even my BMW that I had before, the 435, it was numb compared to this car. Like I could feel the front end getting light going through the water and that, and it floating around. You could totally feel the limits of adhesion there. So yeah, I know some of the earlier 350s, I think they had a different oversetter spring in the clutch. Clutch in this one is just fabulous in terms of its take-up. The only thing I would say is that friction point is really narrow. It really grabs really fast. It just takes a very small difference in your foot movement where it's slipping to where it's fully engaged. So you have to pay attention if you're going away from a stop at a very light or slow pace. You could stall the engine, but otherwise, you know, if you're driving it normally and taking away from a stop normally, there's no issues. Just those really light, slow crawling, pulling away from something can be a little tricky as well. So yeah, had a fabulous time. I really enjoyed the drive today. Really glad I bought this car. It's lots of fun, and hope you're enjoying the video. I'm going to take a moment and try and give you a sense how straight and arrow this vehicle is in steering, and then how sensitive the steering is. So you can see it's very little steering input, and just drives straight down the road. And a lane change. Probably, I'm hoping you can see those shifts and how much steering input it took to switch a lane. It's not a lot. That's why distracted driving in this car, boy, you could easily end up in the ditch, because if your hand just moves a little bit, you're going to be changing lanes fast. recommended. You have 1,000 miles on the car before you really wind it out and drive it hard. So mission accomplished. Yeah, it's been great to enjoy the car. I definitely babied it over that 1,000 miles or 1,600 k. Probably never, barely, well, I went over 4,000 RPM once, up to maybe 6,000 RPM. I've only floored it maybe a handful of times at best. So most of the time it's been 2,500 RPM and lower. It's going to be my toy for quite some time, so I did want a baby the break-in period to make sure the engine broke in well, and yeah, I've been checking the oil every time I stop for gas, and it's hard to tell if it's actually used any. Maybe I don't know, quarter cup or something like that. It's been a very minor amount. Certainly don't have to top it up at all at this point. So yeah, it's been enjoyable breaking the car in. It's really an analog car, a driver's car, really fun. All the feelings that you have are, yeah, makes, if you enjoy driving, this is definitely a car. If you've got the money that you can afford a car like this, it's definitely the one to buy as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, it's been good fun, and I'm continuing my drive back home from the coast. Got her all cleaned up after my epic drive out to the coast of a round trip of maybe 1900 kilometers, so definitely broke in. Cleans up very nicely after a long dirty trip though. It was a lot of fun to be out in the car, and I really got to know it and understand the intent of what's been designed here is pretty impressive by Ford. You know, they've taken what is a basic Mustang and done some heartfelt, thoughtful upgrades to the car to make it a true driver's car. It's, I don't know what do you say, an analog car in a digital world. If you're looking for a car that's self-driving, has lane departure assist and all the latest safety features, you're probably not a customer for this car. This car is about people who love to drive and love their cars.